Thank you. I'm today. My name is Nicholas Charles, and I'm interviewing David Werdiger, who is a family enterprise advisor. I'll get back to that later. A tech entrepreneur, family office principal, best-selling author on wealth transition, experienced non-exec director, and a dynamic speaker and educator. So, thank you so much for joining us today, David. How are you feeling?
Nicholas, I'm great. It's morning for you. It's evening for me as we record this, and really looking forward to a fun chat with you.
Yeah, so it's good to point out that David is actually speaking to us from sunny Australia as they enter the winter season, even though here in not so sunny London, we're entering the summer season. So thank you so much for joining us. Just quickly, David, I'm going to jump into this. You call yourself a family enterprise advisor. What exactly is that?
Oh, it's hard to put these things into words. I used to use what I call the G word, governance, and families just didn't understand it. I guess one term I've used is family office generalist. So my expertise is quite broad. It's easiest to say what I'm not. I'm not a wealth advisor. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. Um, I help families navigate intergenerational wealth transition and succession, but I do it from that other perspective, that really important perspective, which is the human perspective of family relationships, of legacy, of purpose and mission, the stuff that everybody forgets because, you know, money is money, but money is not the goal. Money is the means to the goal. And too many families don't necessarily think of it in those terms. They think in financial assets, but families have non-financial capital. They have their relationships. They have their ability to do things together as a family and influence the world around them. They have all of their collective knowledge. They have their purpose, and I help families discover those and use them as the foundation to build a strong family that can endure for generations.
That's amazing. And thank you for sharing with that because you effectively go against I'll call the traditional norm of professional advisors. But before we jump into that, I'm going to ask you a very broad question here. What is wealth?
Wealth is wellness. That's where the word came from.
Oh,
These days,
fascinating.
if you do, yes, the original meaning of the word wealth was wellness. Um, and that means, a sense of well-being. Are you in a good place? I know a lot of wealthy people who are not happy. Um, why? Oh, lots of reasons. uh, we could go down a whole rabbit hole on there. But the point is that money doesn't make you happy. And there's science on this. There's a fantastic study from Yale. Um, they've looked at people who have won the lottery, and they have a sudden increase in their happiness, and over a period of time, they return to their baseline happiness. Equally, they've looked at people who have suffered great adversity. For example, they've been in a terrible accident and lost a limb, and they go down in their happiness, and then they manage to come back to their baseline. The marginal extra dollar or pound is not going to make you happy. People think it does. And it's a convenient and easy way to measure happiness. But then we're just falling into a trap of measuring what's easy instead of what's real.
Thoroughly agree. And thank you so much for sharing that wonderful concept. And people do forget that wealth is more generic than just financial capital. So why, on that basis, therefore, is say like 95% of advisors today focus so predominantly on financial capital?
Um, oh. So first of all, I should point out that I worked alongside these sorts of advisors. Okay, I don't displace them because if people have financial capital, they need capable management and risk, all of these things to make sure that it is delivering what they want. But
No, of course, we're not here to criticize the
yeah,
professional
no,
tradition,
I'm
the
not
professional
I'm
advisor.
not
And
criticizing.
my background
Yeah,
is accountancy and tax, so I'm certainly
that's
not
right.
one to criticize. but
Yeah.
it has like almost that understanding of what wealth actually is. Has that been lost over time, do you think? And it's the way because we're all trained to be, accountants train as being accountants, lawyers train in law, wealth advisors train on financial capital and making sure it's all about assets under management. But the broad concept of wealth do you think that's been lost over time?
I think it has been lost to an extent. And I think you make a fantastic point. Lawyers are trained in the law. That's the way they look at the world. Wealth managers are trained in asset management, investment. That's the way they look at the world. Accountants are trained like that. And I come from a different space because I'm second gen in my family. I grew up around it with the positives and the negatives. And I went through my own journey as a tech entrepreneur. So I've been in business. So I've got a fairly broad perspective, broader than most. And not that many people have that perspective. So I can't, some wealth managers will cross-train and they'll learn additional skills to their credit so that they can be more effective wealth managers. They can say, yes, let's dig beyond the numbers. Let's dig to purpose. Let's dig to what you really want. I remember this one wealth manager. He was fantastic. I was interviewing a bunch of them a few years ago. And this guy said to me, I'm not going to promise you the best returns. I'm going to maximize the likelihood of you achieving your goals. Okay. Now,
Fascinating. Like
it
that.
sounds it sounds so bloody obvious.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But how many people do that? Not many, not enough. So I was impressed with this guy because he said, no, let's work on your goals. What's important to you? What does wealth mean to you? And it means different things to different people. For some people, it might mean spending lavishly and enjoying the benefits that disposable income have. For some, it just means being able to sleep well at night. So money is a construct. Money is artificial. It's a promise that from the government of Great Britain to say a pound will buy you a pound worth of stuff. That's what it is. But what does it mean? Like I said, it means different things to different people based on our upbringing, based on the stories we hear from our parents, from our family, their stories with money, their struggles with money. It evokes fear. It evokes all sorts of emotions.
You touch on a very valid point, the word emotion. Why is there such an emotional charge over money, over currency, effectively?
Um, oh, gee, now that's a really difficult question. Why? Why? Um, I'd say
And,
there's an emotional
and I said
charge over.
and I asked this question, so I'm going to go and ask this question because we're about to face the largest transition in human history of financial capital. So does it not make sense, therefore, to understand how to deal with the emotions that surround money in order to ensure that money is not lost in transition?
Absolutely. So we're in the middle of it, and the book I wrote a number of years ago was called Transition, and it was triggered by this baby boomer generation turning, the eldest of them turning 65, and everybody thinks, oh, they're all going to retire and they're all going to transition this wealth to their children, and it is huge. But of course, it's statistically, it's segmented. But going back to your question, the question is about emotion. Why is it so emotionally charged? Everything's emotionally charged. I'll tell you why. It's because we're social creatures. Nobody wants to be rich. People want to be richer than somebody else. If you
Wow.
live on a desert island, what's your definition of success? You have no benchmark. You have no one to compare it to. On the other hand, we walk around and we're in a consumer society. and we look at everybody's clothes and their cars and their watches and their jewelry and bags and all of these other creature comforts, their houses, and we compare ourselves to them. We don't necessarily look at their relationships. Oh, some of us do, and benchmark ourselves. I've got a better relationship with you. Hard to measure. Nobody really knows. Again, we're being lazy. We're choosing something really, really simple to measure ourselves by. And, it's, but my dad passed away 9 years ago, very successful. He was in the local Australian rich list for a number of years. And I got teased for it at school, and I didn't like that at all. And those rich lists, I really don't like them because they try to put a complexity of a life down to a single number, and life is more complex than that. So as I say, we're being a bit lazy by thinking that we can just measure ourselves by about such superficial things, when in fact, yeah, money doesn't make us happy. Happiness is so hard to measure. What is it? Is it Bhutan that have the gross net happiness? They're a country that have embraced, how can we, it's not GDP, it's not what we economically produce, it's are we happy? And there are plenty of examples of societies, areas that are economically poor, but are happy. But it's,
yeah, it's a great point. I mean, and again, what is happiness? And is happiness something that is pushed onto us by society? Or I should be X in order to achieve Y emotion, which is insane if you think about it. Because I mean, how many people that you speak to focus on themselves in terms of finding out what it is that they truly want in their lives, as opposed to matching what their neighbors are doing or what their friends are doing or what their society is doing?
not enough. But um, you're English, I'm Australian. You're familiar with the TV show Mad Men?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And there's a wonderful line he said, uh, their job is to convince people that they need something,
Correct.
and therefore will buy it. And so, we've been overrun by the success of Madison Avenue, of the advertising and marketing industry, whose sole purpose is to get us to buy more of their stuff. And how do they do that? By making us feel inadequate
Wow.
if we don't. So, and these are well-established techniques of influence used by marketing industries to say to people, if you don't have the latest iPhone or whatever, you're not as good as somebody else who does. Look at branding. Nike don't make the best sneakers. Okay, people buy Nike because they want to feel. They buy it for emotional reasons. Okay, because they associate with the brand and the brand promise of success. On the other hand, sneakers like Hoka and they're a bit of a counter brand. Sorry, I'm delving into marketing speak because,
No,
again,
it makes a big it's huge because I didn't I mean now that you're putting it into perspective, it seems obvious, but a lot of these things hit our subconscious, so we're not actually realizing how these are actually affecting us. But you're right. I mean, every time we switch on our mobile, we're getting targeted by adverts now. Every time we switch on the TV, the radio, whatever it may be, you're constantly being bombarded by marketing spiel telling you you must have the latest X in order to be this certain human being that you need to aspire to become. And you're like, wait a second, we take a step back. I don't want to be that person. We don't know that because it just hits our subconscious. Because, like you said, these people are brilliant at what they do in terms of getting you to buy their latest product
no,
in order to
exactly right.
be happy.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a study from it's actually a course from a university in Yale called The Science of Happiness. And they've done research about what actually makes people happy. And it is not things, it is more experiences. Those are the things that make us happy. Now, of course, that might say that people who are selling us experiences will use that.
Of
But
course.
the science shows that it is that the good times we experience, typically with others, are the things that make us happy.
And these again, so important to be sharing with everyone. And I like, the fact that you do talk about this with your clients, shall we say? It's so important to understand the humanity of life, but that gets lost in money. Where it should be, it's the wrong way around. It's like the money is the driver of humanity, and it should be the human beings and our emotions should be the driver in terms of what we want in life. And that's sort of getting lost, whether it's through marketing or whether it's through professional advisory. And it's almost we're like stuck in this bubble of what to do and what to say in order to achieve something that we don't even know what we want.
Yep, yep. And so that's what I help people do. I help them work out what they want, and I help them do it as families as well as individuals.
So how important, I mean, we spoke about the great wealth transition. You've written a book on the subject. How important, therefore, is it families to take action now to prepare for that wealth transition? Because you see a lot of families, they suffer from what I call normality bias, where, oh, everything's okay today and don't worry about tomorrow. That's going to get dealt with. And, I'm going to live forever. So, we don't need to deal with this today. And it's in fact the exact opposite. So, how important is it for these families to start talking about wealth transition today, now?
Yeah, it's tremendously important. I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, my kids are spoiled. How old are they? Oh, they're in their 20s." And I say, "Oh, can I say shit on here? I don't know."
Yeah, you can
And
say
I
whatever
say,
you like here.
and I say, "Oh shit! Now you're coming to me now when
Yeah.
they're in their 20s, when they've got well-established expectations and lifestyle, and what am I supposed to do with it? I'm supposed to shift that? It's really, really difficult." But that's one thing. But then you think about the parents, what I call the incumbent generation, and you say, yes, we're going to live forever. Um, but everybody knows they won't live forever, but they will fool themselves because they're driven by one of our most powerful motivators, which is fear. And parents fear. They want their children to be successful most of the time, but they don't necessarily trust them to be successful. And you were telling me earlier about stories of money that's been lost, and people make money, people lose money. And one of the things in the industry today that is very prevalent is this very negative view that wealth is bad, that wealth will spoil you, that wealth will be lost. And there are movements, the Wealth 3.0 movement in particular, that are saying, no, 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 let's turn that round. And let's see wealth as opportunity, see wealth as something that can be good for families, that can be good for the world around them, if they choose to. What did Henry Ford say? Whether you think you're going to be successful or you don't, you're right.
Yes.
So families get into these self-fulfilling promises. And so, parents delay because of fear, because of inertia, because of lack of trust. And instead, what they need to do is flip it around and say, no, let's be open with our children. Let's discuss this. All of these feelings that we've got that we suppress because we live in a consumer society that tells us that we need more of everything. Let's bring that out into the open and talk to somebody about it. Oh, no, 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 I don't need to do that. I'm fine. People don't want to. It makes them uncomfortable. It makes them think of death. And You know, I come from a stats and quant background, and I'll give you a very important statistic. 100% of people die.
Amazingly lost in people's
Amazing,
mindset.
amazing. Yes, but people don't want to deal with that because, you know, what's one of our strongest emotions is fear. What's the greatest fear? Fear of the unknown. What's the greatest unknown? Death.
Yeah.
So having these discussions in families gets them thinking, oh, shit, I am going to die. Look, we could talk about it tomorrow. We'll put it on the back burner. And that's, you know, inertia, that's denial, that's avoidance, all of those things. So those are the things that are holding families back from having the difficult discussion that they need to have about money, about family, about legacy, about purpose.
Thank you very much for answering that question. That was fantastic. Uh, well, that takes me quite nicely, therefore, to we speak about transition, and transition involves beneficiaries. So, what does it take to train and educate the next generation to become good beneficiaries?
And I love that you've used that framing of things, to be a good beneficiary, to be a good owner. If I go and buy some shares in, I don't know, what's a popular UK stock?
Apple, everyone knows Apple.
Apple. Okay, fine. Okay. So let's say I go buy shares in Apple. Do I need any training to be an Apple shareholder? No.
No, not particularly.
All I do is open up a broker account, which I can do in a second these days, and put in some money and buy some shares. On the other hand, if I am a future owner of family wealth, a future inheritor of family wealth, that's a completely different set of skills of being a good beneficiary, of being a good owner. And I draw the distinction between ownership, owning something, and being a custodian of something. And the people that did it best are Patek Philippe. Beautiful watches, and some people may be familiar with the Patek Philippe ad with the father and the son in the nice car, I think, as well. And the
It's a great
slogan is,
advert. Yeah.
you don't own a Patek Philippe, you look after it for the next generation. And so first of all, it's a brilliant marketing campaign because they've turned a luxury good into an heirloom. But that aside, what they've done is they've epitomized the notion of stewardship. And it comes, so being a steward means being responsible for something that is bigger than you. We think about nonprofits. I've been a director of nonprofits for a number of years, and you know, you come in and this nonprofit has got all of their history on the wall, and they've been there for 100 years, and these are the presidents and the board members and everything like that, and you're sitting there in this big old board table and thinking, oh, gee, you know, it sort of weighs on you sometimes. But then you say, okay, look, I'm here to help this organization. I don't own it. I'm in a very, very honored position to have the opportunity to do this. And my job is to sit there on the board, do the best by the organization. And by the time I get out of here in maybe 8-10 years, I leave it in better shape than I found it. For that period, I'm a custodian of that nonprofit as a director. Family wealth are the same, you know. So the nonprofit, it was there before me, it's going to be there after me, hopefully. A family was there before me, it's going to be there after me. But for that period of time when I am an owner, I'm actually not an owner, I'm a custodian, I'm a steward. I'm the person who just happens to be wearing that Patek Philippe watch, and I've got to make sure I look after it, and I keep it clean and polish it and maintain it so that my child will wear that watch in the future. And that is the attitude needed to have generational wealth, to think of it as not yours, but the families, you being one part of the family, and that both the family and therefore the wealth should be able to be sustained for far longer than you. You know, I'm blessed to be second gen. I feel very strongly about the principle of reciprocity. I've received gifts from my parents. I sort of feel that I owe it to my children to give them something.
And how, I mean, you spoke about, the transfer of money, the transfer of wealth. How does that fit into succession planning when it comes to the transfer of a business? Because there's a lot more involved in the transition of a business as opposed to just financial capital. And how do you deal with the emotions surrounding that? How, I mean, do you advise families on succession planning within the family business? And I mean, first and foremost, how important is it to have those conversations like today? But also, how do you help families ensure that the person that they choose to take over the family business is the right person to take over the family business, even if it may not be someone within the family, which is again quite an emotional conversation to have.
Yeah. So yes, I advise families. So when we think about wealth, you can have operating business, operating business, operating assets and non-operating assets. And when we say operating assets, that means a family business. What's a family business? It's a business that the family either works in but most importantly, that it intends to own for a long time. And succession within family businesses is far more complex because you've got these three hats that we wear when we're in a family business. We've got the family hat, we've got relationships, we've got the business hat, we're working in the business, and we've got the owner hat. Some people are family and not owners. Some people are owners and not families. Some people work in the business, some people don't. And so as soon as you're wearing more than one hat, you've got a conflict of interest. I've got to make a decision that's best for the business. Who should be the next CEO? Well, I want it to be my son. Is my son best for the business? Well, okay, if I wear my father hat, my son's the best person. If I wear my current CEO hat, well, it might be somebody else. So identifying future successors, do they want to be successors?
Great
Okay, and if they
question.
don't,
Sometimes not asked.
correct. Oh, very often not asked. Okay, that's a big thing for me. To make sure people are there because they want to be, not because they have to be. And that flows through to a lot of other policies in the family about exiting. Families should not be bound together by assets. They should be families because they want to be families. But back to operating business succession, it's quite a complicated thing. It involves, organizational changes. It involves, everybody's focused on preparing the rising generation, identifying the talent, nurturing them, making sure that they've got a good path through the business, building their credibility. But then when, and I think of King Charles. Charles, one day you'll be king. Mummy, when? Now he is king,
Yeah.
but 73, I feel for him. So when is the right time? I recently worked with a family and the father. We did a transition of the managing director role from the father to one of the sons, and the father did it around age 60, to his credit, and the son was in his 30s, but the father didn't retire. He moved into a different role. So I have a bias against retirement. I don't think it's a good.
I'm exactly the same. I think it's a horrible word.
Yeah,
I link retirement almost to death. It's like, why are you retiring? Why are you stopping? It's like you're telling your brain yeah, it's time to go now.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
retiring. Like, no, that's a horrible word.
But that's a fantastic point, because retirement evokes fear. Imagine you're the founder of a business. You've been putting your heart and soul into it for 40 years, okay? And suddenly somebody says, okay, thanks for that. Go play golf. And but for 40 years, you were important. You provided value, okay? And now you think, well, you know, what am I now? If my business was everything, what am I without my business? The other metaphor I use is having children. You have children?
Yes, I have two children,
Okay,
a
right.
a girl and a boy.
But did you start a business?
Yes, in fact,
Okay,
transitioned to business, so I took over the family business in
you took over the
accountancy.
family business.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. So starting a business is like having a child. You're creating something from scratch,
Yes.
has its own identity. Your identity is bound up with it. In its early days, it can wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning screaming and needing your attention. Eventually, it grows up. And when it grows up, it sometimes takes a life of its own. Now, I've been on this journey because I've started businesses and I've exited businesses. And some of my work with founders is helping them deal with their emotional relationship with their business. I don't consider it successful if somebody sells the business and then the morning after settlement, they've got a big hunk of liquidity in their bank account and a matching hole in their heart because they feel they've lost something. It's the same with retirement. You've got to come to emotional terms with your relationship with the business in order to move forward. You've got to be writing your next chapter before you even think about closing your first chapter. And because you've got to be going somewhere, you've got to be moving forward. If you're not moving forward, then you're going to have an internal emotional barrier to say, shit, this is scary. I don't want to do it. And as soon as there's a part of you saying, I'm scared, I don't want to do it, what do? Delay. Okay. And then you get into these cycles. Dad, when are we going to talk about succession? Look, there's other priorities at the moment. Okay. And that builds up resentment, you know. So yes, you've got to start early. You've got to start thinking about it when you're in your 40s and your 50s, when you're in your prime, and say, what does my next chapter look like? I'm in my third chapter at the moment as an advisor. I was originally a software geek and a quant analyst. Then I was a tech entrepreneur, and now I'm an advisor. So, I'm very fortunate to be able to write those chapters myself and, hopefully keep doing this for a long time and then think about the chapter after that. I have no idea what that one's going to look like.
I loved your comparison, by the way, starting a business to starting a family, because it's so true. So we've started Danti, and Danti's now we're in our second year, and it is a child. It's still in its infancy, and
Yeah,
you're 100% right. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort to to raise the child almost. It's so true, but we obviously we lose that that concept of that it's your child. And if you've been involved with the bringing up of that child for 20, 30, 40 years, there's clearly a lot of emotion attached to that child, your business, shall we say. So, but at the same time, if you want what's best for the business, what's best for your child, then you need to have a plan in place. Because, like you said, 100% of people do die, sadly, and you have to have that plan in place. But I think it's important because there's some of the most successful business I've seen when there is a transition in the family business. The transition is, the person who's handing the reins over, should we say, to the next CEO. They'll step into more of an advisory role within the business.
yep,
And that's so successful because now all of a sudden new CEOs coming in, whether it's within the family or outside the family, he or she has then got 40, 50 years of experience and expertise to tap into from someone who still wants what's best for the business.
correct. And this is the notion of an elder, somebody who moves from their a CEO or an executive role within the business to this advisor, where they still feel useful, they're still able to impart wisdom, they're still revered within the family, and they have an opportunity just through a different channel to still provide benefit to the family. So they don't feel bad about it because they're still doing important work. So
No,
that transition, and that's why we don't use the R word. We use the T word. You're not retiring, you're transitioning. You're now an elder, which is of higher status within the family.
well, you yourself, that's what you're doing, which is incredible because, like you said, you've gone from business, second generation family, and now you as a, I'm going to call you an elder, a wise
No,
man,
no,
should we say?
no.
I don't mean, I'm not talking about age, of course, but I'm talking about, you're imparting your wisdom and your life experiences on those families that clearly need it.
Well, about that, you're absolutely correct, because my mission is to use my experience as a family member, as an entrepreneur, and all of the other knowledge that I've accumulated to help other families on similar journeys. So yes, from that perspective, you know, and I work with people, some older than me, some younger than me, but what I have that I can impart to them is that wisdom that I've accumulated, and I'm very happy to be able to do that for people.
And it's needed. So on behalf of all your clients, thank you very much. But on another serious point, you mentioned, I think we spoke lightly on purpose and having a need greater than individual needs of the family. How important, therefore, is it for families, especially wealthy families, to have an element of philanthropy as part of their wealth plan?
So philanthropy is, very important, because what if you've got that much wealth that you can't spend it all? Um, what do you help? What do you do with it? And this notion of being in service to others. That yes, we're blessed as a family. We've got significant wealth. Is it right for us to just keep it for ourselves, or should we do it for think about those around us? So philanthropy is very important. A lot has changed in the world of philanthropy over the last 10, 20 years. It used to be there was like this invisible wall between making money and then giving it away. And when I say that, I'll sort of categorize philanthropy. And now we're seeing all sorts of other approaches of impact and social enterprise, where people say, hang on, why can't I do both? Let's say, family will set up a foundation, a corpus, which they invest, and they distribute the income to philanthropy. But then they'll say, well, hang on, how are we going to invest this? Why can't we invest it so that the investment itself benefits the world? So I think philanthropy has a massive role, because it helps shift the focus to be a bit more of a steward of family wealth. If you keep thinking it's mine, all mine, that's a very selfish approach. The steward approach is, I'm looking after this on behalf of others. Who are others? Others might be, well, my family first, but society. We've had over time the evolution of the purpose of the corporation. It might be more than maximizing shareholder value. People have expanded that definition to maximizing stakeholder value. If you're a company, you don't exist in a vacuum. You've got a world around you. And the notion of corporate social responsibility has evolved that say, just like a citizen, no man is an island. We have a responsibility to those around us. Companies have a responsibility to those around them. Families have a responsibility to those around them. An outstanding book by a friend of mine, Dennis Jaffe, called Borrowed from Your Grandchildren. It chronicles his study of families that have endured for over 100 years. and it's a very thick read, uh, but the stories are fantastic, and a lot of them are European, of course, because there's a lot of old families there, and it just conveys how the family feels. There's one fantastic line. He says, I don't employ 100 people, I support 100 families.
Lovely
And
quote.
so the owner of the business is thinking, they are my responsibility. I'm an owner of this business, and I've got to keep this business going because this business is the lifeblood, the economic lifeblood of this town. And, so it's having that wealth there to benefit, to provide economic benefit or community to benefit to those around them. And the title of the book, borrowed from your grandchildren, is actually the slogan of the Hermes family. And
Interesting.
like the
Okay.
Patek ad, it says, this is not mine. This wealth is not mine. It is borrowed from my grandchildren. It is, I'm there holding it and looking after it for them. And again, that beautifully epitomizes the notion of being a wealth steward.
And a great way to think about your wealth, that it's more than about you,
Yes.
especially the business. Yeah, love that analogy that you're not employing 100 people, you're looking after 100 families. That's very, very powerful.
As a business owner, um, I'm sure you'll know, what's the first thing you've got to do? You've got to pay the payroll.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
You've got to pay the payroll. You've got to pay rent. You've got to pay expenses. And then whatever's left, that's for you. But those people that you employ, they're there. You've got a contract with them. You've got a commitment with them. And that commitment is, you do a job for me and I give you job security and I pay you. They're not taking risks. You as the business owner, you're the one who chooses to take a risk. The people you employ don't have a risk appetite. They just want a stable 9-to-5 job that is fulfilling and that pays the bills. And it's you as the person, as the owner who employs them, have a responsibility to them. That's what we're talking about.
So powerful. And you touched on impact investing as well as philanthropy all coming together and social investing, should we call it? Are you seeing this now as being more important for the next generation?
It's very important for that generation. That generation is brought up with different approach to money, to its purpose, and philanthropy, impact investment is a fantastic teaching tool as well. You can use it to teach kids how to be responsible for money, how to be responsible for money that's not theirs. If somebody sets up a foundation, I don't know how it works in the UK here, you'll get a big tax deduction when you put the money into the foundation, but after that, it's not yours anymore. It's there for the
Correct.
purposes of the foundation in perpetuity or whatever the terms of that trust or whatever structure is. So if you want to get your kids involved in something, say, okay, sit on a foundation committee and decide how we invest the capital. Because running a foundation is, investing that capital, but also dispersing it. And both of those things are steward roles, looking after something that's not yours, that will be there for much longer than you, hopefully, and make it, a positive change in the world.
And you mentioned bringing the family involved in the philanthropy, which again facilitates better conversations, communication, and communication is pretty much the number one reason why families fail. Sadly, when it comes to sustaining a successful generational wealth strategy. So, how important, therefore, is it for rather than just be the principal saying, as a family, we're going to do X, Y, Z, for that principal to take the responsibility and say, you know what, let's get the entire family involved because it's not about me, it's about everyone getting involved in the philanthropy, in the investing or the impact investing. How do you and is this done often enough, do you think? Or is it how do you part How do you, as you say this now, how do you ensure that the principal parks his or her ego to one side when it comes to communicating wealth and sustainable philanthropy?
Yep. And founders have very healthy egos.
Oh, of course.
Um, if they didn't, they wouldn't be successful founders. So it's so important for families. When I work with families, I say we're building a castle. Okay, the castle is going to last forever, and a strong castle has got a foundation. The foundation's got 3 layers. First one is communication, that we communicate, how we talk, the rules around how we talk. The next one is purpose, shared values, why. And then the third one, once you've got those first 2, is the governance, the specific rules by which we operate as a family. So, communicating as a family, creating space for children to have their own say, and there are some very cool ways to do this in philanthropy, to enable and empower children when they're younger to do it and to grow into the roles. But it does require the incumbent generation to not step back, but create space. Because as individuals, we are a mix of nature and nurture. We have both the collective and the individual. The collective is our family identity, and we've got our individual identity. And families that go too far in one direction is not good. If I'm completely subsumed by, family's everything, then, that doesn't give the individual space. If the individual is everything, that doesn't give the family the space or the power to be what it can be. So what I do is I help families find the Goldilocks zone, where we've got a healthy balance between the individual and the collective. And, doing that in philanthropy means saying, yes, this may be my money because I'm the wealth creator, or I might say, no, I'm shifting. It's our money. Okay, how are we going to give charity? How are we going to decide to do how this might benefit the world around us? And then you say, well, we disagree. Okay, well, let's have multiple buckets. Let's have the kids' bucket, let's have the parents' bucket, and let's have all of our buckets. And what that does is that facilitates communication. Now, sometimes the family can do it themselves. More often than not, they could benefit from an independent facilitator to facilitate those discussions, to make sure the voices are heard. And that's what I do for families. I help
Excellent.
them communicate effectively. I help raise voices that need to be raised, and sometimes suppress voices that need to be suppressed, so that everybody can have the say and be heard.
I love that. And how important is it, therefore? Because you mentioned right at the beginning of this conversation that you're not a lawyer, you're not a wealth advisor, and how much of an advantage is that when it comes to ensuring those conversations are had with the family as an independent facilitator?
Yeah, very. So many families will say, okay, let's set up a family board. We'll invite the family lawyer and the family accountant. They tend to be too close. They may have been around for a long, long time, and they know the family well, too well. Having somebody a little bit outside can view the family a little bit objectively. And a lot of what I do is speaking truth to power, telling families what they need to hear rather than they want to hear. Don't ask me to be a yes person. I'll tell it like it is, and it might make you uncomfortable. But if you need to hear it for the better of your family, or to be aware of something that you had blind spots around. So it's not that you're good or bad or anything, but again, lawyers look at the world like lawyers, accountants look at the world like accountants, wealth managers look like wealth managers. Those perspectives are important. we also need the holistic perspective to say, as a family system of which the pieces that are interacting with each other, how do we work? You know, if you do this, what will that lead to? Thinking a little bit forward, thinking outside the square, alerting the family to risks that they may not see themselves. That's the work.
And it's taking that wide view, taking that step back and saying, okay, what are you guys trying to do as a family, as opposed to focusing on the narrow path of the legals, the tax, the investment side.
They all fit together, though.
Of course they
You know,
do.
if you go to a company, okay, and you say, let's do a strategic plan. Okay, what's the first thing? Okay, fine, let's do a strategic plan. What's our time frame? Usually 3 to 5 years. Go to a family and say, let's develop a family strategic plan. And I've done this with families, and I say, okay, 25 years. That means you're not going to be there anymore, and somebody who you think is a little kid is going to be there. What does the family look like? And there are these fabulous exercises that we do to help the family imagine, to get out of their comfort zone and think, what are the possibilities?
Love that. So we're going to quickly wrap up, but before we do, because we've covered so many things today, David, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. Taking a step back, what can families do today to start the process? And it is a process. I mean, you mentioned generational wealth, 25 years minimum. What should families be doing? What can families do right now to start the process to ensure that they've got a plan or they're working towards a plan of governance, of succession, of wealth transition, so that the emotions are taken away and that better conversations are being had now?
I guess it starts with communication. Um, and that means overcoming your fear of communicating. You know, parents say, oh, but if I tell the kids all about it, it'll ruin them. I say, yes, that's a risk, but there's a risk associated with not telling them as well. So which one do you want? So thinking about that in those terms and saying, the more I communicate with my kids, that shows trust. Transparency and trust go hand in hand. So open it up. Yes, it can be uncomfortable, but your kids will appreciate it. And more often than not, they will respond in kind, because trust breeds more trust.
Absolutely love that. So it's about start that conversation today,
Yep.
because it's an absolutely vital part. The scary stat that's constantly been branded is that 90% of families lose everything within 3 generations. But I'm sure that the work that you do and the work that we do here at Danti will help. And that doesn't have to be a fact for families. I know it's a scary statistic, but it can be dealt with. There are processes in place. But I think, as you mentioned, it starts with a conversation. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I'm actually going to call you out on that statistic, because it has become a bit of a trope, and it is based on some flawed research from the 1980s, a very limited study in the US. So the Wealth 3.0 movement is moving away from the fear story of, you're likely to lose it, and rather the positive story to say, this is something that can be fantastic for your family and for society. How can we bring out the best of everybody and use it for that purpose? Yeah, but the more people are talking about it and understanding and thinking about, well, what's it for?
Great question. Great question. One of my mentors said the quality of life depends on the quality of your questions. And
Yeah,
that's a very, very good question to have. What's the point? What's the purpose? What are we
yeah,
trying to achieve here as a family? And it helps. And I fully agree with the movement of Wealth 3.0, that it's not about fear anymore. It's not about distrust. It's about almost bringing the family together, because at the end of the day, it's more than just about you.
yep.
And before we go away, David, how can we find out more about you? Where can we find your books? Where can we learn more about the work that you're currently doing, which is exceptionally valuable?
Okay, thank you for that opportunity. So
You're
yes, I'm in
welcome.
Australia, but I have clients around the world. I have clients in the UK. I have clients in Singapore. I travel. But the easiest thing to do is go to davidwerdiger.com, which is pretty easy, or look me up on LinkedIn. I write a lot. I'm passionate about what I do. I think that might have been fairly evident.
Yes,
Uh,
no, definitely. And that's how I found you on LinkedIn, by the way.
yeah,
For those who want to know
and
how on earth did a Brit connect with someone from Australia? It's a small world, and we connected on LinkedIn.
yeah, and and I love sharing information, sharing knowledge, and if that can help people, that's great. If they want to reach out to me, that's even better.
No, almost certainly. David, thank you so much. That was incredible. Really powerful. I can't believe an hour's just gone by, literally at a blink of an eye. That was superb. Thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. And like I said, we'll put your link to your website on this video so more people can find out about the great work that you're doing and hopefully buy some more of your books. And the book is Transition, correct? And it's available on
Correct.
Amazon.
Amazon, Audible. Thanks so much for inviting me, Nicholas. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you. You're welcome.